Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. As a teenager's lawsuit against Meta and YouTube unfolds in Los Angeles, regulators in Europe are charging TikTok for potentially addictive app features. Now, with U.S. regulations fragmented across states and the EU employing a centralized model under the so-called DSA, conversation raises critical questions about children's safety, algorithmic design, and corporate responsibility. And cybersecurity expert Igor Protasowicki from Vistula University joins us now to make sense of it all. Good to have you back in the studio. Welcome.
My pleasure.
So the first one is, let's talk about accountability. Should companies like Meta, like YouTube, TikTok, be held legally responsible for mental health outcomes? And if so, how do we enforce that?
First of all, we are all not guilty until proved otherwise. So we have to think about this algorithm as a creation. It was created to work in a specific way, to keep people occupied with the content that is served to them and to serve them some advertisements. That is how the large players earn today. And the outcome, we have to think whether it was designed to serve this kind of content and work on youth brains in a specific way, or it was just accidental.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, this is going to be argued. What's interesting when this particular case is taking place in California, that's one of the very few states where you can actually try something, because we don't have DSA in the United States. So I'm just wondering, looking at the legal challenges here and the precedents, and just merely having this case, what does this mean? And how, let's say, high do you see the challenge, the burden there of, as you said, proof?
Yes, that comes from the big difference between European legal system and American legal system. In America, it's all based on a precedence, and the first time such trial begins, the judge is the one to say whether it's right or wrong or how to fix the problems. In Europe, it comes with a legal procedure, the lawmaking procedures that take years to proceed through. Then European law should be implemented to the state regulations of all the member countries. And now when we compare those to realities, we see that the first trial can be placed in California because people down there are very fragile on their own point, of course, and they create majority of American regulations as the first ones. The same thing was with environmental protection implementation. Now, if we try to create same acts in Europe, all companies that serve any kind of services on European soil must obey, because they have to provide their services according to our regulations. And how are we going to implement all kinds of protection towards not creating the abusive algorithms that will work in the way that will create the strong bond between the user and the content that is served? It raises another questions. How, when, and what kind of limitations should we implement?
Mm-hmm. Also, I think it's worth noting two things. One is that the same plaintiff here, we'll call it KGM at the moment, also took TikTok and Snapchat to court, and I believe there they settled out of court. So I think, does that indicate that these big digital tech companies don't have much of a case, or how do we take that?
It created, the precedence. It shows us the correct path, the path that we can follow, and the solutions that we can implement in every other case that appears in latest history or in the nearest future. Mm-hmm. So if we prove that it works or create some area of security, maybe preventing any kind of bond that would be too strong between the user and the services that are provided, that provides us of being addicted to the contents, that can be okay. And now the question is whether it can be implemented in more and more platforms.
Mm-hmm. And it's also going to be raising the question of looking at, well, at least the tech company will say those parental controls are already limits by this design question, I suppose is that enough? And are we seeing a kind of maybe, we had a similar direction decades ago with cigarettes, with tobacco companies. This was also seen as harmful.
Yes.
Do you think this is the beginning of that?
Well, the parental control requires any kind of supervision over your pupils. So if we have very good bond with our children, and if we spend enough time with them, we can control the contents that they browse through. Otherwise, we have to implement some third-party software just to give us a report over what kind of content has been browsed on our children's devices and so on. If we have time to do that, if we feel responsible, it can be moved to parents. But we have to remember one thing, not every single parent will be able to do that on one hand, and not every single parent will be willing to do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's also the terms of how it was designed. I want to also go into the cultural difference. We touched on it before. What's happened in Europe with this Digital Services Act? That was a long time in the making. There's that regulation, really, I'm not going to say federal level, but I mean, it applies to different member states of the European Union. It's not the same case with the US. How are these two factors also involved? One on a regulatory level. Can Europe stomach more of this than the Americans? How does that play into all this?
In America, the same thing like in Europe, everything must be compatible with the Constitution. In America, citizens pay a lot of attention to their liberties. So anytime somebody tries to create a limitation, whether it's about applications or healthcare or environment and all kinds of protective things, they ask whether it's right to spend some amount of our liberties to the government, whether we trust our government, and so on. In Europe, since it's a federation of states, of independent states that have their own individual legal systems, it's about coordination of law implementation and large-scale consultations between states and with citizens inside. The difference in implementation is if we input something as a legal obligation in Europe, every single operation must obey. Every company must work within the limits. In the United States, if it's not federal law, it must be obeyed on a state levels.
But also, we're looking forward to all these cases. I mean, we have actually in the pipeline 1,500 other similar cases, so they'll be watching what happens here. So how do you see this play out? I mean, this is going to be quite a trial, but what are we going to get out of it? Will a precedent be set of any kind?
Well, probably not. First of all, those organizations like Meta, TikTok, or YouTube, which means Google basically, will do everything not to lose profit that they create out of serving the content to everyone. They will try to be obedient to the regulations, both in the United States and in Europe, but they might tweak their algorithms somehow to limit the ability to serve maybe some particular types of content. But on the other hand, they will do everything to keep audience live and to keep audience with their services rather than let them go.
But also, let's look at the technical side for a minute. If we're looking at how everything's designed, this infinite scroll, all the what's sometimes called doom scrolling, right? I think the lawyers have called it also platforms, digital casinos. From a design perspective, do you think that whatever app it is that harmful behavior?
It is, because it occupies a lot of our attention and it changes the way that we look at the world. It drains our life energy out, because when we concentrate on the content long enough, we are unable to work on other parts that we're responsible for example. And we already know that the change is possible, because we have a Chinese example where they banned serving specific kinds of content to youth generation. They limited by law the amount of time that can be spent within all the platforms. And somehow it works. How it works, we don't know, because all we know is just official information served us by China. But if it's possible to change it that way in Poland or any other European country, probably yes.
All right, so it will be an interesting court case to watch. Thanks for all of that. Thanks for coming, Igor Protasowicki there from Vistula University. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
Thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks. We'll stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.